Hi friend, welcome to the live study channel. So I am going to discuss microservices interview question. My first question is, what is a Spring Cloud? Probably the first microservices interview question that you maybe encounter. Spring Cloud in a microservices is a system that provides integration with external system. It is a short live framework that builds an application in a faster manner. Being associated with the finite amount of data processing, it play a very important role in a microservice architecture. For typically used case, Spring Cloud provides some out of the box experience and a set of extensive features maintained below. Version and distributed configuration, discover discovery of service registration, service to service call, routing, circuit breaker and load balancing, cluster state and a leadership election, global lock and distributed messages. Move to the another question. Second question is, what are microservices and why someone want to look at implementing it? Is a very most important question for interview room. Microservices is an architectural style which structure an application as a collection of loosely coupled, independently maintainable, testable and deployable services which are organized around business capabilities. If you have a business focus and you want to solve a user case or a problem efficiently without the boundaries of technology, want to scale an independent service infinitely highly available stateless services which are easy to maintainable and manage as well as independently testable, then we would go ahead as an implementation microservices architecture. Is a very most important question. Okay, testable is this point is a very most important point in a application. Okay, move to the another question. Another question is, when should one consider microservices kind of architecture? So generally there are two cases. If you already have a monolith application and its growth to an extent where there are problems in scanning or we are not able to utilize the comments models services across different projects platform and there is a need to do so as well as at the same time implementing new feature is painful and more error prone and it is difficult to scale further. For new application where implementation has not started, we can think of a business case to be efficiently implementation which can be easily maintainable, testable and scalable in the future and might be used across other products platform at the same time. At the same time, it's a very most important question for the monopoly application, right? And there are 3 points is given a time. Okay, move to the another questions. My another question is, what is a services discovery and how it is helpful? In a cloud environment where Docker images are dynamically deployed on any machine or IP plus port combination, it become difficult for dependent services to update at a time. Service discovery is a create due to that purpose only. Service discovery is one of the service running under microservices architecture, which register entire entities of all of the services running under the services mesh. All of the action are available through the RESTful API. So, whenever the service are up and running, the individual services register themselves to service discovery service and service discover services maintain heart heartbeat to make sure that those services are alive. That also service serve the purpose of monitoring services as well. Service discovery also help in distributing requests across the service deployed in a fair manner. The very most important point for the this point. Okay. My next question is, what is client side and server side service discovery? Is a very most important question for interview room. In need of clients directly connecting to load balancer in this architectural pattern, the client connect to the service registry and try to fetch data or service from it. One, it is get all data. It does load balancing on it. Registry one, it is get all data. It does load balancing on this on and directly reaches out to the service is need to be talked to. This can have a benefits where there are multiple proxy layer and delay are happening due to the multi-layer communication. In a service side discovery, the proxy layer or API gateway later try to connect to the service registry and make a call to appreciate service forward over the client connect to the that proxy layer or a API layer. Move to the another question. Another question is, explain how can you scale a microservice based system. Assuming that the majority of providers using microservice architecture, one can scale the system by increasing the number of needs of service by bringing up more containers. One can also apply to catch at microservice layer, which can be easy to manage as invalidation of the caches can be done very easily as the microservices will be the single source of truth. Caching can also be introduced at the API gateway layer, where one can define caching rules like when to invalidate the caches. One can also shut down some container when the requirement is less, that is scale down. Move to the another question. Is a very most important question for interview room. Difference between microservices and SOA is a very most important question for interview room. Microservices are a continuation to show a SOA. SOA started gaining around due to its distributed architecture approach, and it emerged to combat the problems of large monolithic application around 2006. Note down. Both SOA and microservices of this architecture share one common things, that they both are distributed architecture and both allow high scalability. In both, service components are accessed remotely through remote access protocol like RMI, REST, SOAP, AMQ, JMS, etc. Both are modular and loosely coupled by design and offer high scalability. Microservices started gaining buzz in in late 2000, after the emergence of lightweight container, Docker authentication framework, Kubernetes, Mesos, microservices different from SOA in a significant manner conceptually. Conceptually. First point is SOA uses enterprise service bus for communication, while microservices use REST or some other less elaborate messaging system like AMQP, etc. Also, microservices follow a smart endpoint and dump point, which that manage that when a microservices need to another one as a dependency, it should use it directly without any routing logic components handling the pipe. Second point is in microservices, service deployment and management should be fully automated, where SOP service are offer implemented in deployment monoliths. Third point is generally microservices are significantly smaller than what SOA tend to be. Here we are not talking about the code base here because a few languages are more verb based than the other ones. We are talking about the escape problem domain of the service itself. Microservices generally do one thing is a better way. Microservices should own their own data while SOP maybe share a common database, so one microservices should not allow another microservices to read its data directly. 5 point. Point number 5. Classic SOA is more platform driven, while we have a lot of technology independence. In case of microservices, each microservices can have its own technology stack based on its own functional requirement, so microservices offer more choice in all dimensions. Microservices make a little consumption as possible on the external environment, as a microservices should manage its own functional domain and data models. Move to the another question. Another question is shed light on the way by which we can access the RESTful microservices. There are following way with the help of which you can use a RESTful microservices with 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 the use of load balancer REST template. With the use of multiple microservices, we can easily use a RESTful template. If you have been given a large number of RESTful template, then always make sure that you use a right way. Another question is why microservices are better than monoliths. Microservices architecture meant for developing large distribution system that scale with the safely. There are many benefits for microservices architecture over monoliths. For example, monoliths application is built as a single unit. It is usually composed of three components: a database, usually a RDBMS, a server-side executable, WAR file deployment in a Tomcat, web spheres, etc., and a client interface JSP, etc. Whenever we want to add update functionality, developer need to change at least one of these three components and deploy the new version to production. The entire system is tightly coupled, have limitation in choosing technology stack, have low cohesion. When we need to scale a monolith, we deploy the same version of monoliths on multiple machine by copying the big var and year file again. Everything is a contained contain into a single executable file. Microservices architecture, on the other hand, is a composed of small automation service divided over business capability that communication with each other networks mostly. Is a functionality. Okay. GSP side, monolithic is a single point microservices architecture component. Okay. Move to the another question. Another question is define the Spring Batch framework with respect to microservices. It is a batch framework that is cute, comprehensive, and it is light in weight on the application. Its lightweight nature is a great source of possibility possibility in this real am of microservices. This is so because it is designed in such a manner that it can facilitate the development of robust patch application. It is that kind of features in the realm of microservices that can easily build upon productivity. It is specifically used in the development of enterprise applications that are necessary to make sure that applications developed are able to meet the set of standard of a particular organization. Move to the another question. Define caching with the respect to environment in which microservices service operate. It is a commonly observed fact that the cache is that kind of an area in a local memory that has the ability to hold a copy of frequently re- researched data. In other words, if you have a cache accumulated in the application is speed up in a phenomena manner. On the other side, you can also use the cost function to control the amount of cache you want. Move to the another question. Another question is what is the API gateway? Is a very most important question for a experienced student. API gateway is a special class of microservices that meet the need of a single client application such as Android app, web app, Angular JS app, iPhone app, and provide it which single entity point to the backend so resource microservices providing cross-cutting concern to them such as security, monitoring, metrics, and resiliency. Client's application can access tens or hundreds of microservices concurrently with each request aggregating the response and transforming them to meet the client application need. API gateway can use a client-side load balancer library Ribbon to distribute load across in need based on round-robin function. It can also be protocol translation either HTTP to MQ if necessary. It can handle security protected resource as well. Feature of API Gateway Spring Cloud Discovery Client Integration Request Rate Limiting available in a Spring Boot 2.0 Path Rewriting Hatrix Circuit Breaker Integration of for Residency. Move to the another question. Another question is how to maintain ACID in a microservices architecture. ACID is a full form is a atomicity, consistency, isolation, or durability. Okay. ACID is a acronym for the four primary attributes, namely atomicity, consistency, isolation, and durability ensured by the database transaction measurement is based on the transaction measurement like atomicity. In a transaction involving two or more entity, either all of records are committed or none are okay, one or two involving consistency is a database transaction must change affected data only in a allow way following a specific rule, including constraint trigger. Isolation. Any transaction in a process not yet committed must remain isolated from any other transaction. Durability. Committed records are saved by a database such as even in a case of a failure or data restart, the data is available in its correct state. In a distributed system involving multiple database, we have two options to achieve acid compliance. One way to achieve acid compliance is used to a two-phase committed like KA2 P2C, which ensure that all involving services must committed to transaction com- completion or all the transaction are rolled back. Use eventually consistency where multiple database owned by different microservices become eventually consistent using asynchronization messaging using message protocol. Eventually a consistency is a specific form of weak consistency. Two-phase commit should ideally be discouraged in microservices architecture due to its fragile and complex nature. We can achieve some level of acid compliance in distributed system through eventually consistency, and it should be right approach to do it. Move to the another question is how do microservices communicate with each other. Microservices are often integrated using a simple protocol like rest over http over communication protocol can also be used for integration like amqp jms kafka etc. The communication protocol can be broadly divided into two categories: synchronization communication and asynchronization communication. Synchronous communication, the REST template web client Figen client can be used for synchronous communication between two microservices. Ideally, we should minimize the number of synchronous calls between microservices because networks are brittle and they introduce latency ribbon. A client-side load balancer can be used for better utilization of resource on the top of REST template. Hystrix circuit breaker can be used to handle partially failure gracefully without a cascading effect on the entire ecosystem. Distributed committed should be avoided at any cost. Indeed, we should post of eventually consistency using asynchronous communication. Asynchronous communication, in this type of communication, the client does not wait for a response. Indeed, it just send the message to the message broker. Make like Rovit Miku, a Kafka can be used to asynchronous communication across microservices to achieve the eventually consistency. How will you develop microservices using Java? Spring Boot along with the Spring Cloud is a very good option to start building microservices using Java language. There are a lot of modules available in a Spring Cloud that can provided boilerplate code for different design pattern of microservices. So Spring Cloud can really speed up the development process. Also, Spring Boot provide out of the box support to embedded a servlet container Tomcat, Jetty, Undertools inside an executable jar under over jar so that these jars can be drawn directly from the command line, eliminated the need of developing war file, deploying war file into a servlet container. You can also use Docker container to ship and deploy the entire entity executable package onto a cloud environment. Docker can also help the eliminate the works on my machine problem by providing logically separation for runtime environment during the development phase. That way you can gain probability across on premises and cloud environment. Define the process with the help of which we can deploy execution handling in the realm of microservices. It is important to note that microservices and Spring actually provide a unique manner in which you can control the controller advice. You can say that you have experience for deploying a class of controller advice with the help of the exceptions that are being used by the class of controls. What are the advantage of microservices? There are various advantage of microservices. They are also follow the teeny base of the code is cute, easy to maintain. It is cute, easy to scale. Has it has only a individual component. It also supports the phenomena of independent implementation. It drastically reduced the installation time. It renders good support for the parallel and the support teams. Another main advantage of this microservices in the form of the fact that it is the ability to facilitate the technical diversity. Another question is, how would you perform security testing of microservices? Before answering the microservices interview question, explain to the interviewer that microservices cannot be tested as a whole. You will need to test the pieces independently. There are three common procedures. First procedure is a code scanning, flexibility, adaptability. Okay, code scanning to ensure that any line of code is bug free and you can be replicated. Flexibility, the security solution should be flexible so that it can be adjusted as per the requirement of the system. Adaptability, the security protocols should be flexible and the update to scope up with the new threats my hackers are securely break. You can also follow the blog explaining influence of the microservice architecture. Move to the another question. Another question is, what are the different type of two-factor authentication? There are three type of essential required for performing a two-factor authentication. The first point is it things that you know, like password or pin or scan log pattern. A physical essential that you have, like OTP, phones or ATM card. In other words, any kind of essential that you have in a external or third party device. Your physical identity, like voice authentication or biometric security, like a fingerprint or any eye scan. Another question is, what are the fundamental of microservices design? This is probably one of the most frequently asked microservice interview question. There is what you need to keep in mind while answering to it. Define a scope, combining loose coupling with the high cohesion. Create a unique service which will act as an identifying source, much like a unique key in a database table. Creating the correct API and task is special care during the integration. Restricted access to data and limit it to the required level. Maintain a smooth flow between request and response. Automate most process to reduce time complexity. Keep the number of tables to a minimum level to reduce space complexity. Monitor the architecture constantly and fix and flow when detected. Data stores should be separated for each microservices. For each microservices, there should be a isolated build. Deploy microservices into containers. Servers should be threads as a stateless. Okay, thank you for the response. Is thank you for listening. Is a patience. Thank you for the live studies. Please like and share this video. Thank you.